Okay, so I'm going to be talking about blocking in this video, crochet tutorial tip type video. I know a lot of you have probably heard about blocking, wonder what it's for, how to do it. So I'm just going to show you my method and why I do it. So why do we block? Well, blocking is one of those, either you love it or you hate it. It is an extra chore at the end of mainly making granny squares, any sort of flat crochet objects. And the reason we like to do it is because it completely transforms your crochet pieces. So if you look at some of the squares I've got here, these are going to be for my forthcoming crochet granny square book. You can see that they still look very beautiful, very nice, but they kind of look a little bit stiff. They don't drape very well, and obviously when we're crocheting we have different tension along the way. Maybe our stitches get a little bit different, so blocking really helps with drape and shape, keeping consistency. So here we have some that have been blocked, and immediately you can see the difference in the way they fall, the way they drape. They have this lovely almost lace-like drapiness to them, and it really opens up the stitches and defines all the stitches. So it's like kind of gluing your crochet squares. So I'm going to show you my method. So what I do is nothing fancy. I just grab a piece of foam board. So you can get all these fancy plastic wooden boards, but I like to just use a piece of normal leftover foam board from a DIY store. You can also use those puzzle foam boards that kids like to use, because I think it gives more flexibility. So, and with that, I'm going to be picking a square. So here's one of my pre-blocked squares. You can see it's quite sort of stiff and rigid. So what I like to do is I'm just going to get some normal sewing pins. You can use tacks as well. You want something that's not going to leave a mark on your crochet. Obviously I'm using a kind of creamy color, but these do not, when they get wet, they don't leave any sort of rust or anything like that. So do make sure that you use something, do a little test first to make sure that they don't leave any rust marks on your crochet. So, but the first thing we need to do, what I like to do, is to get it wet. Now you can pin it first, then spray it, but I like to get a little bit of water. So I get a little pot here. This has got a little bit of dish soap in, so just normal washing up liquid. And just to give it a little bit of a wash. Try not to agitate it too much. I'm using acrylic yarn, so that's another thing. You want to make sure the type of fibre you're using. So this is fine for like cotton and acrylic, but if you're using wool, then you have to be really careful when you get it wet because it can felt. So I use a little bit of soap. Normally I do this over the sink, but for the sake of this video I'm using little pots. And then I'm going to give it a rinse in just some plain water to get rid of any excess soap. Okay, there you want to make sure, just giving it a good squeeze, get rid of all the excess water. Just move that out the way. And then bringing in our little foam board, we're going to unravel and get the right side. And this is all about getting the shape that you want. So the first thing to do is very hard to know where to start. So I'm going to take some of my little pins. And the first thing I like to do is just pin the corners and just to stretch it out a little bit, each corner. So that's probably the best place to start, is the corners. Make sure they're square level, because how you pin your square is how it is going to look at the end. Okay, so I've done my corners. Then I like to find somewhere in the middle. It completely depends on the shape of your granny square. Each square is going to be different. You might have a really lacy design. You might have a very traditional granny square design. So you can pin as much as you like or as little as you like. For example, you could just stop here and that would be what your final granny square would look like. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add, now I've done those pieces, so I'm just going to add, you see these little gaps here, just going to make those more level. I'm going to do that all the way around as well. Just make sure that's all level. You might have to adjust sometimes as you go. Just basically use this time to get the exact shape that you're looking for, and this really helps if you need squares to be consistent and all be the same size. So the great thing about using a foam board is you can just stab it wherever you need to stab it. So some of these pre-made wooden boards are great, but they don't give you the flexibility that you might need. So I could do every stitch if I wanted to, but I think that looks pretty square. And I can just manipulate any internal pieces. Sometimes I even pin on the inside, but I'm pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is let that dry overnight. I've realized that it takes at least 12 hours to completely dry. You can speed up the process with a hairdryer, but I just let it dry overnight, and then I can just get on with my next square. So join me for the power of editing. Join me once this is dry tomorrow, and we will see what it looks like. Okay, so I've allowed this to dry for 24 hours. It's actually been 2 nights actually, because I didn't get around to filming the next day, but it's definitely dry. So all we need to do now is take out our pins, and don't be scared, it's not going to, what it shouldn't do, spring back to its original crumpled state. So it should keep its shape. All the stitches should be defined how I wanted, almost like glue. And take out your pins carefully. Try not to stab yourself. And there we go. And what you can see now is this beautiful drape has happened as well. And all the stitches are defined exactly how I want them to look. So there we go, it looks so beautiful, and it makes such a huge difference if we compare the before and after of this particular square. You can see it's quite a change. So there we go, we can now add it to our little pile of beautifully blocked squares, and then crack on with all the unblocked squares. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed that little brief tutorial on how to block, how I block it anyway, and the reasons why I do it, and the change, literally show you the change of how blocking affects your granny squares. So there we go. But I will see you soon for some more crochet crafting fun. Thanks for watching, everyone. Huge thank you as always to our monthly subscribers for helping make these tutorials possible. So I will see you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.